Hi, this is Hamzah Hussain here from DURA, Dundee University Review of the Arts. I'm one of the MLit Writing Practice and Study students, and we're here in London today for the Inpress Indie Festival of Publishing. And today we have an interview with Alexa von Hirschberg, the Senior Commissioning Editor from Bloomsbury. Bloomsbury Publishing is one of the UK's leading independent publishers, but has companies in places such as London, New York, Delhi and more. Established in 1986 by Nigel Newton, Bloomsbury has several award-winning divisions and imprints under its umbrella. The company's growth in the last 20 years is largely attributed to its acquisition of J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series. This has allowed the company to expand and set up new divisions such as its academic and professional publishing divisions, which are also now award-winning. Alexa von Hirschberg is the Senior Commissioning Editor at Bloomsbury. Hirschberg's career began as an assistant to the editor at Canongate, but since 2008 she has been with Bloomsbury, where she started as an editorial assistant and worked her way towards her current position. Hi, Alexa.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure.
And how's your day been so far?
It's been very good.
Good, yeah. So we've just finished the festival and it was great. There was a lot of great ideas thrown about and information. But what attracted you to publishing and how did your journey start?
So I was born in South Africa and grew up in Yorkshire, and both my mum and my stepdad were English teachers. So books and reading and storytelling was a huge part of my life, and really language and writing was the only thing that made sense to me. And I didn't really know anyone in publishing. And so I went to study in London, and while I was there, I was working in a pub to sort of fund my university education into the English degree. Mm-hmm. And I met, in a pub, an literary agent whose wife was looking for ran a scouting company, literary scouting company.
Oh, okay.
They scout the market for foreign publishers. Mm. And I got an internship, and that was my way in.
Oh,
and I
okay.
didn't have anywhere. I started to pay my own rent and everything like that. So I worked in a pub by night and internship by day. And then I was lucky enough to get a job at Canongate Books in 2006 or 2000. I can't even remember anymore. Okay. And then that's how I got into the system. Yeah. The process.
So apart from reading manuscripts and working closely with authors, what other jobs does the editor's job entail?
So I think it's really helpful to think about the editorial role in my role it sort of divides quite neatly into three different things. Mm-hmm. The first is acquiring, which is meeting agents. Agents sort of get to know your taste. They send you manuscripts. You evaluate them and go through the acquisitions process. Mm-hmm. So that's one part of the job, which is a very important part of the job. Yeah. And the second part is editing. So I'm very hands-on with my authors. I can sometimes do a couple of years worth of work with them on a manuscript. Mm-hmm. And so that's the editing part. And then the third part is the publishing. And that's the sort of most complex side of it. But that's also an editor's role, is to sort of be the linchpin for the author in-house and have a 360-degree view of the publishing process in-house. So you oversee the marketing, the publicity, the rights, all the different types. You do the copy and the create early proof copies and design the schedules. So it's quite.
So you see it right through until the launch day.
Absolutely. You're the sort of a good way of thinking about it is imagining an editor being like the sergeant major at the sort of head of an army, kind of trying to galvanise everybody towards publishing that book and that author in the best possible way. And
so the acquisition of authors for yourself, does that usually come from unsolicited manuscripts, or is it agents, or a little bit both?
Because Bloomsbury is quite a large organisation, we are fortunate, or it might not be fortunate, but we get submitted a lot of manuscripts. So I would say 98% of my books come from agents. Okay. And I definitely think there's room for doing more scouting around the market, but because we get so much volume, from agents. That the majority of my books come from agents.
And you answered this a little bit earlier in the panels, but what sort of writing that works for you? What sort of things do you look for in a new author that you're looking to sign on?
Yeah, well, one of the great things about working for Bloomsbury is that we don't have lots of little imprints all designed to sort of buy 10 commercial fiction titles, or police procedurals every year. I publish quite a wide range of titles, from literary fiction to sort of some upmarket commercial, through to non-fiction. And for me, I think what unites all of my authors is excellence, brilliance, beautiful sentences, but also something pioneering about them, whether that's through the way they play with form or their vision. A good example would be Renier de Lodge's Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. I'm always looking for writers who have something unique to say and can do that brilliantly. And I think one of the things that I'm interested in prize winning, but I'm also interested in books that somehow explore, tell us about the world, and also what's very important to me is championing new voices, so finding new stories that haven't yet been heard.
And once you find those new stories, can you briefly kind of touch on a typical process so you've got the manuscript and you've kind of edited it, so what sort of happens next?
Well, once we acquire the manuscript, we'll set a schedule. So usually from the point where the manuscript is finished, so when it's edited, it will be about a year to publication.
Okay.
And that might seem like quite a slow process, especially if it's taken you 3 years to get an agent, another 2 years working with that agent in order to get your manuscript to an editor, and then another year or two working on it, and then it'll take another year to publish. But that lead is very important, because of various different reasons. Things like magazine lead times, we need to have finished copies typeset and copy edited and produced in advance so that we can send that out to magazine and literary editors and get them excited about the book. So it's a long process, but it starts with the editing, and then it goes to meeting your publicity and marketing people and working with your editor on copy, the cover being designed, and then the publicity team will help you write features, and sort of work on what the best publicity strategy is for you and get you booked into events. So it's a very complicated process.
Lots of components.
There's lots of plates spinning all the time, which is why publishers are all a bit mad.
And in terms of finding new writers, I understand you've done some teaching with like creative writing courses and things. How do you find the writing that comes from those sort of courses? Is it any different from just say, an author that's just sent in a manuscript to an agent? Is there a trend there, or?
The creative writing industry has grown enormously over the last sort of 10 years, and one of the negative things I think is that from a commissioning point of view, if I'm totally honest, is that if a manuscript has been workshopped within an inch of its life, in a creative writing masterclass setting for then it's quite difficult to know what that author really writes like.
Okay.
And I think sometimes you can take on an author based on the sort of extraordinarily polished prose that comes, and then you get their next book in, and it needs a lot of work, understandably, and that's fine. But I think ultimately I think it's a good thing that there are places out there. I think some are better than others. What I look for really is a talent that I can be publishing, in 15, 20 years' time. And so for me, it's about I like to be part of that nurturing process rather than necessarily taking somebody who's already been kind of home. But it just depends. I think it depends.
Trying to kind of be part of that longevity of the author.
Yeah, I think that's the danger from my point of view. Is you take a writer on who is, who has obviously lots of talent, but then they also need a lot of work to get there, and it might be that you don't have the time to do that, but it depends.
And in the past, one of your writers, Rob Doyle, came to Bloomsbury from a previous editor, with a previous editor. And I know you said in previous interviews that you didn't really have much discussion with the other editor, Daniel Caffrey. But what was kind of the main thing that you sort of learned as an editor from that experience? What was something that stood out to you?
Well, Rob Doyle started in Inpress. His first novel, Hero the Young Man, was published by a small press in Dublin called Lilliput. They were fantastic. And we acquired the paperback rights to his book. And he had already been edited by the editor there. But he'd also worked a lot for the Irish Times and for various other sort of other papers where he had an editor that he worked on more long-form journalism. And I think that's great. And then when we edited his short stories, I contributed and Daniel contributed. And ultimately, Rob is a sort of writer where he'll just ignore us both and do what he wants. Yeah. But I think it depends. That thing, I love working collaboratively with other editors, and often when there's a US editor of one of my books that I've commissioned in the UK, we'll work collaboratively with the US editor.
Okay.
So it depends on the author and what that. Some authors really don't deal well with having lots of different voices and need a much more streamlined approach, and some love as many voices as possible to help them try. Ultimately, whatever the ultimate goal is to get the book into the best possible shape. So I don't have a sort of a particular ego around that.
Yeah. Many people, when they think of Bloomsbury, of course, think of Harry Potter. So you joined Bloomsbury in 2008, so it was a year after the final book was published. So what was the company like at that stage, and how has it changed since then?
When I started at Bloomsbury, I knew everybody in the company. It's about people in my offices were about 100 something people. Now we're 700 globally. So it's changed an enormous amount in that time. Interestingly, the size of the division that I work for, the adult trade division, hasn't changed. So we're still around the same amount of editors, but we've used the sort of Harry Potter money to diversify our publishing, as you said in your intro, into academic and professional, and also set up offices all over the world, with the goal to give us greater heft in the market, and so set up brilliant networks and sales networks all over the world so that we can get our books into as many territories as possible and really get as many sales as possible. But it has changed the company. I mean, we are independent, very much so, but we are a big independent.
Yeah, like you said, they're kind of on the larger scale, big, small. And you've worked with your own division, which is the adult consumer division. So is there ever any crossover? Do you ever have to kind of cross over to maybe the education or the professional divisions or any?
One of the great things about having specialist publishers near you is that if you're publishing, I mean, let's just give an example of, say, a memoir about cycling or a memoir about sport or something. We've got a sports division who have incredible networks into that market. So it can be brilliant to utilise those networks, but we could have more crossover. And I think that's something that we're aiming to build, is to open up the channels between all the different divisions so that we can help each other out. Yeah,
and that can, I suppose, happens more and more when writers can blend genres and things together a bit more. So
totally, I love. I suppose Lucy called it nature writing, although I guess people will. There's a lot of debate about what that is and who that belongs to and all those things. But we have a huge sort of bird division and lots of sort of outdoors. We have publishers who are publishing specifically into those markets, like the RSPB and various other things. So we can obviously utilise those contacts in our marketing and for research purposes.
Yeah. And go back to it. We had Dan earlier from Unbound. So the things like the smaller independent publishers and even things like crowd-funded publishing becoming more appealing to authors. What do you see the industry being like in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think the growth in audio is very interesting, and that seems to be really growing rapidly. So I think there are a lot of people doing very clever things with audio, and I think that'll be an important part of the business, continue to become an important part of the business in the next 5 years, 10 years. But I ultimately think that, one of the things we've been talking about in the panel today about diversity and regional diversity is going to be a big part. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if a major publishing house sets up a base somewhere in the north of England in the next 5 years, which will change the sort of fabric of London publishing, which is it's always been in London or some in Edinburgh. But I think that's going to be very interesting to see how the UK, if it continues to be the UK, how we can come together and publish writers from all over the place better. I think that's going to be an interesting thing. But ultimately, I do think that as long as you're publishing brilliant writers very well with passion, that's going to continue to be important. I mean, it's very interesting looking at, there was a few years ago people were saying, the ebooks, the digital revolution was happening, and actually, if you look at the print. If you look at ebook figures, they tend to be in line with what's working in print. And if you look at audio as well, the big audio titles are also the big lead titles. So I feel like that print and publishing brilliant writers is really the foundation of what we do, and that's not changed for a long time, so it's not going to change that much in the next 5 years.
And you touched on kind of ebooks and audios there, which was kind of my next question. Noticed that over the last several years, Bloomsbury's revenue for digital products has kind of been, like you said, in line with printed products. But how do you think technology kind of has impacted the way Bloomsbury publishes, if it has at all? Has it made, and will it make, digital publishing, will it make a significant, shift or impact in the future?
I mean, yes, it has to, because technology is changing all the time, and I think from my understanding, it's the effect is going to be on a systems level. So in terms of our, invoicing structure and our database structure and things like that, the areas that I don't really have much knowledge about. But I think that absolutely technology is important from that point of view. But you also need the money to invest in the infrastructure. So that's the other side of it. And there are bigger houses, bigger corporates that have the deep pockets to be able to take risks and try out new things and new platforms. So I think publishing will respond to that, and we have to respond to that if we're going to compete.
And a lot of the things that we've been talking about in the panels today is diversity and reaching, to marginalised groups and things. And of course, you've worked with Rennie Edo-Lodge for Why I'm No Longer to Talk to White People About Race. What else is Bloomsbury doing to give voice to those underrepresented communities?
Yeah, I think this is a really important moment for publishing, and not just for publishing. I think we're having a kind of cultural sea change where people are looking at the systems in place and thinking about how they're formed, and are yearning for sort of meaning and change, and that's reflected in where we are in publishing at the moment. And Bloomsbury are actually responding to that in a really healthy way. We've always, from our very conception, have been a publishing house that has championed international writers. So Michael Ondaatje was one of our first writers, Abdulrazak Gurna, Ramesh Gunasekara, Adaf Suev. I recently published titles by Rennie, but also Kiesi Lehman, who's an American writer, David Chariandi, Aminata Fauna. So I think it's in the fabric of what we do that we publish international voices, but I think on a staff level, that's really important, something that's very in line with the rest of the industry, is very imbalanced. So we have a diversity inclusion action group, which is just about formed now within Bloomsbury. We also have changed our internship program, and we have a really brilliant 3-month internship program at Bloomsbury, which is paid well above the minimum wage.
I'm smiling because clock onto that.
Yeah, click onto that. So you should all go and check that out. There's information on our website. We also promote our jobs and our internships in places like Creative Access and things like that. And I think that the board are taking things very, very seriously, because, as we all know, it's there are huge challenges that face publishing if we can't become more relevant. I think publishing is in danger, is in danger of becoming a monoculture, and that's not good for anyone.
And publishing in general is kind of being accused of being, dominated by certain types of individuals, like i.e. white males and middle-aged males. And as a woman in the industry, how has that journey been for you? And talking about certain challenges, is there anything that you've
faced? Yeah, I mean, I think the gender pay gap announcements that sort of happened last year were very interesting, and they told us what we already knew, which is that we have a lot of women in publishing. I mean, publishing is run by women, but when you get to board level, executive level, that's where you start seeing the men, and they occupy higher salaries, which is why you get the gender pay gap. So I think there are conversations to have around training and around the skills that women tend to have, and how they're valued. Whereas I think the jobs that men tend to occupy, which is like the business side, they tend to be valued higher than the sort of editorial side, let's say, and paid more because of that. So I think there's lots of questions around that. But I mean, I'm in meetings with just women. But I have to say, there is a huge problem in that it's mainly white women from a certain background, and I think that needs to be addressed. That is just as important as what I described as that kind of executive and non-executive problem. But one of the things that Bloomsbury did recently, which is fascinating, is that we all had unconscious bias training, which was absolutely fascinating because we were all biased, and it's about thinking about how you make your decisions and questioning that. So it's a process, and it's a long process, but I think and I hope that we're doing something active and positive.
Can you explain a little bit more about that
unconscious bias training? Well, unconscious biases. So these are the things that we all have. We make our decisions, often very quickly, and those can be based not on logical reasons, but for things that we're used to. Like, we're used to seeing white men in power, so our neural pathways are designed to say, okay, that makes sense to me. Whereas seeing a young woman in power is a little bit trickier for our brains to muster. So, and there's plenty of people who know a lot more about this than me, and I would suggest that anyone interested go and look at some websites and look it up. But it's about understanding how we make our decisions and how, therefore, structural imbalances can take place.
And you mentioned, obviously, it's at the board and executive level, so to make the kind of changes, you would have to make them kind of from the top down, would you say?
Any sort of big changes in a company have to be top down, on a sort of in some ways. But I think what people in the lower echelons of the company can do is have their voice heard, and that's what's happening at Bloomsbury. Particularly, there's a lot of engagement with the senior staff about how we can change our culture to make it more appropriate to the way that people are living, and the sort of ideas that people want to explore.
Oh, thank you. I've just got a couple more just to round things off. You mentioned in the panel earlier that Bloomsbury's acquired Benjamin Meyer's backlist from Blue Moose, and the offing is getting published next month.
In August this year.
Is it August? Not February?
February is when the Gallows Poll reissue is coming out.
Right, sorry.
Yeah.
What other exciting things lie in your division for Bloomsbury in 2019?
Yeah, so next month I'm publishing an epic fantasy about dragons, which I never thought I'd say, but I'm very excited about it. We have this brilliant author called Samantha Shannon, who we acquired when she was 19, with her Bone Season series, and she's just a phenomenal talent, and she's written an 800 and something page epic.
Wow.
And everyone is saying, move over Tolkien, it's time that fantasy had a new queen, which I'm very excited about. So that's coming out end of February. It's called The Priory of the Orange Tree. And then in April, I'm publishing a novel by Damien Barr, who is a brilliant Scottish writer whose memoir, Maggie and Me, we published, I think, 4 years ago, something now. And this is his debut novel, and it's set in South Africa. And it explores legacies of violence and relationships between mothers and sons. And it's utterly beautiful, and I'm very excited. And Graham Norton and Marion Keyes tweeted about it already, as well as Diana Athill, who recently just passed away yesterday. She wrote a beautiful quote for it, so I'm excited about that. And also in May, I'm very excited about a debut from an American author called Joanne Ramos, who was born in the Philippines but lives in New York, and it's really about how capitalism dictates our moral decisions, and the setting is a luxury surrogacy facility. So it's kind of like The Handmaid's Tale's over here. This is here, And in fact, it's already happening, Kim Kardashian.
Yeah.
So that's called The Farm, and that's out in May, and I'm really excited about that.
And finally, what advice would you give to those who are looking to join the industry and become editors themselves?
So, my advice is engage with the industry. The industry is hungry for new talent, and in fact needs brilliant new talent from all over the place. And I think things are a lot easier now than they were a few years ago. There's schemes like the Book Trust charity, which has flats in London, so that people, if they get a job or an internship, they can apply to use those facilities. And there's the Spare Room project. There's all sorts of different projects that, if you can't come to London, that there are ways in which you can make that work. And also, a lot of these internships are paid now. So I think try and engage the industry. Follow people on Twitter. There's the Writers and Artists Yearbook is a brilliant resource as well, and they've got a great site. So there are lots of courses. But I really think the thing to do is just to try and get to know the industry as much as possible and work out where you might fit into it. And ask lots of questions and come to festivals in London and meet people like this one. But just know that I think often people find publishing really mystifying and they don't know how to get in. I thought that, had no idea who these people were and what they did. But the doors are open. It's just a case of trying to connect with people.
And I found certainly been the case today with a lot of publishers and people like yourself and Nathan, who we've got over there as well, openly saying, there are all these things open for students and graduate levels and different recruitment things. So it's been really great. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you for your time.
No problem.
Thanks.